All right, so we are so happy to have everyone back on this episode of No Permission Necessary, which is a special one. We have our friend Jeanmarie Gaudrault joining us, who is a board certified behavior analyst at a clinic for kids with autism. She is a wife. She's a mother of three young kids, 7, 4, and 18 months. So you're busy. And also, she is a breast cancer survivor. So we're going to talk about all the things today. This is a really relevant episode to us as mothers, women, and also it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we're really happy to
Welcome.
have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. We're so thrilled. I mean, it's such a powerful story, and I'm honored to know you, honored to know your husband, your family, and being able to kind of, I wouldn't say I had a front row seat, but I definitely had a sideline seat to kind of seeing what you went through and the challenges that surfaced during this time. And I think it's such, when we think about how to raise people up and raise up community and make people, you help people to feel connected and heard and seen and all those things. Felt such a compelling, pull to ask you to be on this month for Breast Cancer Awareness Month and see how your story can impact others. So you have many more parts of you outside of being a survivor. So, you know, given that you wear so many hats, you're a mom, you're in your career, you're a wife, you're a breast cancer survivor. What of those identities do you feel is most defining you, like right now in your current space?
I would say being a mom, that's what I've always wanted to do, what I've always wanted to be. I joke around that if I didn't become a board certified behavior analyst, I wanted to go back to school and be a pastry chef because I always used to love baking. I still do. I love baking, and that was always my passion. And I passed my exam, so here I am as a BCBA. But I've always wanted to be a mom. I've always said I've wanted a ton of kids, and I would say everything that's gone on, I still think that that is my most favorite part of myself, being a mom, and it will probably always be that.
So powerful. And I will say about the pastry chef, I was thinking about how I spent 4 hours. Jill knows. I spent 4 hours on a lasagna last week and I texted G and I was like, this is the worst lasagna I have ever tasted in my whole life and I need your support. And she was so encouraging to say, like, just try again, it'll be okay. But I love that. I mean, being a mom, and we know, like, Jill and I talk about this frequently on the podcast, that the way that you show up in your life once you're a mom is just different. It is
Yeah.
unexplainable. You can't convey it to others. It just is this, I don't know, attunement to somebody else, right? Essentially. And I think that that's such a, profound shift. And I'm sure it's probably shown up a lot in your life, in your work too. Like once you became a mom, how did that impact your work and how you showed up in, working with children with
Yes.
autism and, what did that look like?
Yeah. Now that I'm a mom, I feel like the kids that come through our clinic door, I put my mom hat on first, and especially like a new younger kiddo that we work with. Like we have the youngest one we have in our clinic is like 18 months old. And, when parents first hear that their child has a diagnosis of autism, it's very overwhelming and emotional. And um, one of my roles there is to kind of like greet the family and meet them where they're at and kind of tell them like everything's gonna be okay. We have these great providers that we can support your child with and these services. And I relate everything to being a mom. And, if I were in their shoes, how would I feel or how would I handle things? And I think that's important. And I find that it's helpful for them too, like um, most of them, when they hear I'm a mom of three, they're like, you have three kids? Oh my gosh, you're so young. Like, so it's nice to kind of build that relationship with them and um, say like your child will be okay and they're in great hands. And we have a lot of people in our clinic who are parents and they're able to provide that that type of input too, and perspective when it comes to working with their child.
It is so reassuring when parents hear the voice of a provider, right? So we see it on the other side with mental health and addiction where, I had a mom today ask me, she's like, "Do you think my son's gonna get well? Like, do you think he's gonna be able to lead like a more independent, quote unquote, normal life?" Right. And I'm sure you receive very similar
Yeah.
questions, right? Like, is your child gonna be able to live a normal life? And really what I say to them is, well, first of all, we have to redefine what normal is because I think that's just a general statement. But also, these are the things that are going to help improve their life, right? And it's going to give them a
Hmm.
foundation for change. And so being able to provide that support and that reassurance, I never like to place false expectations on what we can do, right? And I'm sure maybe there's some of that for you is not promising the moon and the stars, but also being realistic that early intervention for any behavioral health
Hmm.
or mental health diagnosis can really be so impactful. And so I guess, what has been the highlight of that for you working in that space?
Seeing so many different kids come through the door and families, backgrounds, experience, obviously seeing the growth. It's so nice when we get a younger kiddo and we get to work with them until they're 5 or 6 and they go off to school, and just seeing
Mhm.
that growth and development is so nice. And like, there's a few families that have since gone through our services and their child kind of aged out, but I follow them on social media and they'll post pictures or videos, and um, we'll message each other back and forth, and they'll share all the great things that their child is still doing. And I'm like, that's so nice to hear. We started with them and when they were 3 or even younger, and now they're just doing great things as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old in school, like public school with typical peers. It's everyone's
Mm.
dream when they
Dream.
hear that their
Yeah,
child has, yep,
Yeah.
a diagnosis. So it's really nice to see
sure.
that.
That's one part we miss, like, at least for me as a clinical licensed therapist. Like, we don't always, because of our ethical, like, boundaries and I don't always get to follow, right, families. I always used to say
Yeah.
this working in crisis, but even like my therapy clients who I may see them for years.
Yeah.
And after we're done, we're done. Like, there is no social media updates. There's no, unless they contact me to like give me an update, which some have and has been, it's so nice. So, anyone that's listening, like, your therapist wants to know that you're doing well. Like, it's nice to have like a success story because you don't know. We're kind of like left in
Yeah.
the blind. So, like, that actually is nice that you get to have like that update afterwards.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely some ethical guidelines that I follow, but one, once they're out of our care,
Fair.
then it's
Yeah.
all fair game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure they find you like you're an important part in it. And
Yeah.
for a parent, right, when there's something that needs to be addressed early in childhood, like, you're a really integral part of that family.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how much, I don't know if you wanna talk about this, but one of your husband is good friends with us. We've known him for years, Molly more than me, but we talk a lot about us being in recovery and the wives and partners in recovery, but you're not in recovery yourself, but your husband is. What is that like? 'Cause I think for us, that's our norm, but it's not
Yeah.
the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's easy for me. He makes it easy. When he first got sober, I'm sure there was a part of me that was like, like, is there anything that I would do that would cause him to relapse, or anything in my life that I need to remove because I'm worried for him? Like, I'm not, I'm not worried in the slightest. Like, he's got his stuff independently. I have my stuff independently, and we, come together as a united front for our kids and each other. But I would say he makes it easy to be a wife of someone in recovery. It's not difficult. He's great with everything related to that and everything that I went through.
Did you know him in active use? I don't
That's what I
totally
was just
know.
gonna ask. That's what I was
Yeah.
just Oh, you
I
Yeah.
did? So
did.
you knew before and after.
Yep. I did. We
What was
started
that
dating
like?
in college. Yeah,
Yeah.
so when we started dating, it was our sophomore year of college, and he I didn't know that he was using at the time, and, or maybe it wasn't right at that time, but I didn't really pick up on it, and in the end, I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, either he hid it really well or I am, like, completely blind to that aspect of the world and people and what they go through. I think it was a little bit of both, honestly, but we dated through all of that, and after college, I went right into grad school. I had a full-time job. I was in, school full-time, in grad school full-time, and, um, when he approached me about his addiction and seeking help, I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, I was like, I had no idea,
Well, it sounds like
but,
you didn't have time to notice what he was doing. You're
I
you're
know,
in
I was
You
school,
were
you're
busy.
working, like, you probably saw
I
him
was
once a week. I
busy.
mean, I remember
Yeah.
those days, yeah.
I was busy, and I really am so thankful that I was so busy because once he was away in treatment, I had, my stuff to focus on, and I was like, "All right, he's getting the help he needs, and I need to stay focused on school and work and getting my master's and my BCBA degree." So thankful I had that stuff, but um, yeah, I've been with him. We've been together for, oh gosh, since 2008.
Whoa. And so once he went to treatment, he never had a reoccurrence to use, essentially is what we call it, or a relapse. He went to treatment, got sober, and kind of the rest was history. You guys reconnected, started dating again, or maybe you dated through, like, what did that look like? Did you stay by his side through
Yeah,
treatment? Did you, you
I
know?
did. Not 2008. I'm sorry. It was 2012.
Okay.
2012 we were together. But I stayed with him. There was some time where of course I wanted to like call it quits, but like I said, I was really busy and I just kind of trusted that he was going to do the right thing for him. And, when I said, when you're better and healthy and in a better space, let me know. But it's not like was like, that's it, we're done. I kind of stuck around and did my thing. I was also living right where he was and grew up. We had met where is from, his hometown, and I was going through school there, so I wasn't leaving, and I knew that I would still kind of see him and be involved a lot. Plus, I was really close with his family, and I was
Mhm.
kind of right there. So, yeah, I stuck around.
I
You also
mean,
sound like the least codependent person right now. You're like, "Yeah, like, he just had to go do his thing, and I wasn't worried at all. I was just doing my thing." I'm like, "Wow, this," which I know probably at the time, right, wasn't as easy, but, a lot of people, the turmoil of that, it almost seems like you were shielded from the chaos, which in some ways is probably a blessing, and then in the other ways, it's like a lot of questioning, like you said, like, am
Yeah,
I stupid? Did I miss something? What's going on? Am
right.
I blind?" Like, but, I also it sounds like you both learned about that together and built a really good foundation. I know we've, seen you through the years, and he's obviously been there supporting you through your own recovery in a
Hmm.
different sense over these last
Yep.
years.
yeah, so I
Yeah,
think that
absolutely.
that's, some of the resilience we talk about. You have resilience in motherhood, you have resilience in, being married to someone who's in recovery and the ups and downs of that and traveling that journey. But, I think a lot of what we wanted to focus on the podcast today is your journey of your life essentially being completely turned upside down. And I don't want to really finite a question. I think just what is your experience and kind of how did you find out about the diagnosis and what did the beginning of that process look like for you?
Yeah, the very beginning. So I typically like to start by saying, sharing my brother's cancer story, which is, you know, unique. And he was diagnosed with colon cancer in January of 2023, and he was 37 years
Okay.
old. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, he went went through chemo and radiation and surgery, and through that, my primary care physician had said we should get you some preventative screenings, and one was, of course, a mammogram, and that came back clear. It was there were no concerns at all, and um, breast cancer runs in my family, but I never thought I would get it. I always say I've never been scared of getting cancer until I got it.
Mm,
um, at that time, they had also recommended genetic testing, but I didn't get it because it wasn't covered under my insurance. So, and then shortly after that, I found out that I was pregnant again with our third baby. So, kind of fast forward to about when I was like 32 weeks pregnant, I literally woke up one morning with a really large lump in my breast, and I never, I was like, where did this come from? I haven't felt it before. And it really felt like a clogged milk duct,
mhm,
which, something I was familiar with from nursing two other kids. And so again, I didn't think anything of it. I brought it up to my OB at my 35-week appointment, which was a few weeks after I found it. And then, of course, I'm like, man, I lived with this for like 3 weeks and didn't tell anybody. But she had said, it's probably not a clogged milk duct. It, could be a cyst. Regardless, let's get it checked out. So she immediately sent me for a mammogram and an ultrasound. And then after that, they sent me for a biopsy. And that was when I was like 35, 36 weeks pregnant. And then 5 long days later, she called me when I was at work, 9 a.m., sitting at my desk, to tell me that I had breast cancer.
mhm.
That's a moment you don't forget.
Did you
No.
feel like when talk about sitting there for weeks, not telling anybody, does that include your husband? Does that like, do you live in that silence, like, quietly, like, being scared, or did you tell him, or were you just kind of frozen?
I did tell him, um, yeah, I did tell him, just not right away.
Yeah, yeah. Such a scary, scary spot to be in. You even when you're sharing, you're talking about the, genetic predisposition, as we call it, right? For a lot of different things and a lot of different illnesses. And can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what that meant at the time for people that don't know? Like, what does that genetic testing, what would it have looked for, essentially?
Yeah, there's different types, but in the end, I did get genetic testing after all of this, and it showed that I do have the BRCA gene. And
Okay.
it looked, yeah, it looks at so many different things and takes into consideration all of the family history. So I had to, take note of where breast cancer is in my family and other types of cancers. And yeah, it ended up showing for me that I do have the BRCA gene. And then I found out it came from my dad's side. He carries the BRCA gene, and his brother carries the BRCA gene. And um, my cousin on my dad's side, who had breast cancer and went through treatment as well, also had the gene. So I look back and I'm like, man, if I had gotten genetic testing when they first offered it to me when my brother was diagnosed, I would have found out that I had the gene. And I don't like to think of this like, would I have had a preventative double mastectomy at that time? Probably
Sure.
not. But then I
Mm-hmm.
also just found out that I was pregnant a couple months later. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I can't think like that, of course, but part of me can't help but think and wonder, like, what
Yeah.
would I have done if I got that testing um, at that point?
And
But
and just so everyone knows, the BRCA gene is the not everyone who gets breast cancer has that gene.
right.
But that gene, I don't know, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that gene is known to cause not just breast cancer, isn't it other cancers as well?
Yeah, ovarian cancer and prostate cancer in males. Yeah, your chances, if you have the BRCA gene, your chances of developing one of those cancers is much higher.
And did your
Okay.
brother
So
also carry that gene? And did
he
he
did
find that
not.
out? He did not.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
and his colon cancer was kind of just a fluke. Like it wasn't based on a gene. Yeah, it was really kind of out of nowhere. We do have some family history of colon cancer, but he doesn't have the gene for that. He doesn't have this BRCA gene. So,
Okay. So that was separate
yeah,
and
it's
apart.
really, yep, it was really interesting to see
Yeah.
and, all of that in the end.
And that testing's really expensive too, the genetic testing. And you had
Yeah.
mentioned, the insurance not covering it, which unfortunately a lot of people make decisions based on, does my insurance cover it or not? And
Uh-huh.
I will
Yeah.
tell you that I'm also I've went through over the last couple of years with my OB. So my aunt, so my mom's sister had breast cancer.
Hmm.
We don't when she was young. So I've always had preventative mammograms because of that history, because of how her age.
Hmm.
She never wanted to get tested, and I don't think the genetic testing was around, but back when she got can I think it's like like a newer thing.
Hmm.
But they won't cover or order the testing for me because they say that my mom is the next closest kin, so my mom has to
Mm.
get the testing. And then they're like, "Well,
Um,
maybe your grandmother can get the testing, your mom can get the testing." And I'm like, "Okay, but they're giving my mom a hard time to get it through the insurance." So it's just like this whole thing
such
where
a
it's like
Yeah, it's
racket.
not easy.
Uh-huh.
it's like you have to know how to advocate for yourself. I had them document all of the cancer history on both sides of my family. It's like, listen, this is a thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
and I just had to go through this with my children and with, Alan's heart attack, with, getting them preventatively screened for their hearts. And so I just wonder, like, how much that plays into all of this, the stress of like a diagnosis too, when the insurance piece, because it's a huge that cost and the insurance stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't think twice. I was like, no, I'm okay. I don't need to get it right now. And I just like never revisited it. Um,
Because you don't know what
like,
you
So
don't know.
you don't know what you
yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I never, ever in a million years thought that I would get breast cancer. I don't know why I didn't think that. I don't know, it runs so deep in my family. And I'm like, man, I really should have opened my eyes. But like, people don't think of this and,
No.
getting
Right.
cancer and like, what do you do,
Especially
or
at your
preventing it?
age. So you're
Yeah.
Yeah.
so how
So
old
how
are
old were
you?
you?
And you're 36 weeks pregnant, right? Is that
Yep.
roughly?
Yep. So I was 34 and yeah, like 32 weeks pregnant, 34 weeks pregnant when I found the lump and got diagnosed. So yeah, I really just thought that it was a clogged milk duct or just like a bump, like nothing crazy.
So then what are your treatment options when they find that out? What does the treatment planning look like then from there? Because I'm sure you're in shock when you get that phone call, but then you go into action mode.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
got to fight
things
this.
moved so quickly being that I was pregnant. So that day we went to the breast center at Smilo in Trumbull, and I met with the breast surgeon there, and she shared my pathology report and shared, I had stage 2, grade 3, triple negative breast cancer, which that type of breast cancer, if you don't know, is known to be more aggressive and spreads faster than the other types of breast cancer. So mind you, I'm pregnant and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just diagnosed with breast cancer while I'm pregnant. What about my baby? Is this safe? What do I do? So shortly after that, I ended up meeting with my oncologist, and he went over everything about that type of cancer and the history, and ended up telling me, my plan of action for treatment, which he said I would be getting chemo first, 12 weekly rounds of chemotherapy, and after that, I would end up having 4 more biweekly rounds of treatment. And every 3 weeks during that time, I was getting additional immunotherapy treatment. So, but first things first, have my baby. um,
Oh my
so
gosh.
he ended up talking with my OB, the breast surgeon. They all came together as a team and said, "You'll be induced." I would be induced at early at 37 weeks, like that weekend. So he ended up calling me that Friday night, and he was like, it was Easter weekend, and he was like, "Oh, good news, you'll be spending Easter at home with the family, and then you'll be induced Monday morning, April Fool's Day, April 1st." And I laughed, and I was like, "I with all due respect, I do not wanna have a baby on April Fool's Day. I already feel like this is a joke."
Joke.
Um
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "I really feel like we're being punked right now," and I said that to Marty. I was like, this has to be a joke." So I was like, "Can we push it a day?" He's like, "Yep, you got it, April 2nd." So I,
That
ended
probably
up
felt
being
good to have,
induced.
yeah, that a little bit of control in this
Yeah, like a
really
Yeah,
choice.
uncontrollable, like, unbelievable
Untenable. Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah,
untenable. Yeah.
and that's one thing that my doctors all said throughout my treatment, and all of my doctors, because now I have a lot. They've all said, at times when I've been like, "Well, I guess, I don't have a choice, so I guess I'll do it." And they're like, "No, Jean Marie, you do. You do have a choice."
Mhm.
So that was nice. And I love my providers. They're amazing. And I trust them. And a few of them had said, get a second opinion if you want. Go see another doctor. I'm like, nope, I trust you guys. This is what we have to do. So,
Do you feel like,
yeah.
well, your baby was born on April 2nd. What's that baby's name?
Jordan, baby girl
Jordan.
Jordan.
And do you feel like I don't know. I mean, I obviously am looking at it from my outsider's perspective, but she traveled this journey with you. So what, not to say your other kids didn't, but I feel like the relationship with Jordan must be a bit different if you can maybe try to describe it. And she's so cute. I've gotten to meet her.
This is where I get the most emotional.
Of course.
Yeah, naturally.
I say all the time, I'm really a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And to say that we weren't a little surprised when we found out that we were having another baby, I say I really truly feel like I was meant to have this baby, because she, I think, pushed the tumor out. And I without being pregnant, I don't know if I would have when I would have felt the lump and caught it. I really don't know when I would have caught it. And stage 2 is pretty early, but not early enough for my liking. But still, I really think that I got pregnant with her for this reason, and I really think that she saved my life. So yeah, I mean, of course, I have all my relationships with my 3 kids, and I like to say that my relationship with Jordan is just special and unique.
Yeah. So, so powerful. I mean, I think that the journey of what you've gone through, especially being a mom, I mean, I remember your husband calling me and telling me, I'll never forget where I was. I was on my way to work and he said G has we call you G, but your name is Jean Marie for the listeners. But he said, she has breast cancer. And I remember thinking, this is like the most, horrific, you know, diagnosis with small children. And how does one get through it? And really, what he shared with me as you guys went through this journey and started to uncover more about the diagnosis is that it's actually fairly common for pregnant women to get diagnosed with breast cancer. And I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that when he shared that with me. So maybe you could share a little bit more about that and kind of the awareness around it.
Yeah. I After meeting with my OB again after the fact, I was like, "Do you see this often?" I asked her, I was like, "Do you see this often?" And she was like, "You would be surprised how often a pregnant woman is diagnosed with breast cancer." And then just kind of like word of mouth, like talking to people, sharing my story, and, "Oh, I knew somebody else who was pregnant that got diagnosed with breast cancer," and like just kind of realizing that it is more common than we think.
And so for you going through this, 3 small kids, husband, having to take time off of work, raising a newborn. I mean, I talked to Jill about this when I had my first child, Bodhi, and in the first couple of weeks, would think about single moms trying to manage a newborn in their apartment alone, whatever, right? I would have this like picture in my head. I couldn't fathom what that looks like, right? It's just not my experience. And so when thinking about your journey, again, it was like one of those moments that kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. How? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
even know if I have a question. Just how? How did you do it? How did you how?
With a lot of help from our family and our friends, of course, and our community and our neighbors. Yeah, it was not easy, but I had no choice. Like, I just had to do it. Like, I started treatment 2 weeks after Jordan was born. So I couldn't nurse her. The treatment days were long. We would go, I don't know, maybe like 8:30 in the morning. I was also cold capping to try to preserve my
Oh,
hair. So when I was cold capping, I had to be there 30 minutes before to get the cap on and get it going. And then I would get all of my pre-meds, which is another 30 minutes. And then my treatment, the chemo treatment, was about an hour each, and I got different types. So maybe like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. And then I had to sit for another hour and a half with the cold cap. So we were gone out of the house all day. We had to coordinate people to pick up our other one from off the bus, the other one at daycare, um, because there were times that we weren't home until late, depending on what time we got in for the start of treatment. And I say we because Marty was there with me every
ugh.
week. So it was long, and we just had to do it. I didn't have a choice. My mom would come and be with the baby during the day every week. I'm from Long Island, my family is there, so she would come from Long Island and stay over every Sunday for the week, because my treatment days were on, a Tuesday or Wednesday, but there were also times that my my white blood cell count was too low, so they would push my treatment, and they would turn me away, right at the door, and I'd head home and try again the next week. But
Ugh.
we we just, like, had this routine every week, and we stuck to it, and it was unfortunately our normal, and thank God Jordan was so young and she didn't realize, but yeah, we couldn't have done it really without our family and our friends and community. That's I don't know how people without that support do it, honestly.
Are there restrictions when you're going through chemo or radiation around being around children or exposure to other people?
No, obviously I couldn't nurse her, but, no, nothing that we had to be really cautious of with that.
Well, that's good, 'cause I thought
Yeah.
I obviously I remember hearing this news and because I don't know, I think there's so many that's why we have this awareness, right, around
Mhm,
cancer and around
mhm.
because it's like, okay, you get the diagnosis, but then it's almost and I don't know if you experience this, but you get a lot of that attention at first, and then people go on with their lives. Like, people that are not in your day to day kind of go
Yeah,
on with their lives. I mean, it's and meanwhile, you're grieving what you had before this illness. You're in this new normal, which is probably chaotic, and there's some
right.
resentment there, or like, why God, why? Like, why do I have to do
Mhm.
this? Like, so if you could just talk about that kind of emotional roller coaster, and then throw in your postpartum. I mean,
I mean, no.
again, how?
Right,
Which, but I also feel I also can relate to. I had to just do it, right? Like this
right,
is what's in front of me. This is
right.
what I have to do. Like this is the next thing to do.
Yeah, like, for the kids, for our family, like, that's what we had to do. It was hard, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I will say the first couple of weeks I was feeling okay. The chemo was, you know, not as bad as I thought. It wasn't until about, I would say, like, the 7th treatment, so, like, the 7th week, that I started to really feel sick. I was getting really tired and run down, almost flu-like. I ended up in the hospital a few times. I had a blood transfusion. Yeah, it was tough. And everybody that I saw and met, the nurses and everyone, they knew I just had a baby and going through postpartum and all these emotions and things, and everyone had a ton of sympathy. And my brother and sister-in-law started a meal train for me, and it spread rapidly through
Far
all of
and
our
wide.
family and friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was so helpful because I think the meals were set up for 3 days a week. They were coming to our house. And then on the off days, people were still sending things. And I like to cook. So, on my good days prior to this, I try to cook often throughout the week. And I didn't I didn't have to worry about that. Obviously, I wasn't cooking, but we didn't have to worry about food. We didn't have to worry about even like snacks and stuff for the kids. Like people were really just chipping in everywhere. It was amazing.
I was just gonna say, you don't think about how much of a load that takes off, right? When
Yeah.
you don't have to think about going grocery shopping or all these things that become really less important, right? When
Hmm.
you have this huge health crisis that now you and your family are facing, and all your attention you want to put towards that. And I think having that community is so underrated when it comes to
Yeah.
dealing with this stuff, because I don't know how people do it alone or
I
with
think
limited
I
people
don't.
too.
supports.
I've talked to a couple people that actually know people in your neighborhood, and I've, been there to visit too. And people say, like, it's the best neighborhood. You had the best neighbors to kind of show up for you
Yeah.
and be there for the kids. And, you know, with having small children and knowing the level of exercise, attention, energy that they have as small kids, and going through what you went through, what do you think that, the experience of, going through the illness, coming to your feet in the recovery process, what do you think it taught the kids? And were they able to understand, you know, your oldest is 7, so probably a little
Hmm.
bit more clear on what was going on,
Yeah.
but what did that look like for them?
Yeah. Braden, our 7-year-old, he was aware that I was. We called it. I was sick. Mommy was sick. There was. We described it as there was like a sickness in mommy's body, and um, I was getting better and I was getting healthy. He saw me through everything when I got my port put in. He
Mhm.
notices everything, the bandage on my chest from the port. That was a minor procedure, all things considered, but he noticed things like that. So we just told him, mommy's sick, I'm getting better. And then, of course, when I'm in the hospital for a few days, it's like, well, where's mommy? Um,
Mm,
so, but now he knows that I had breast cancer and he knows about Breast Cancer Awareness Month and that pink represents that. And at his school, they do a pink day and he wears pink and he's like, this is for mommy's cancer, when mommy was sick. So he's like
that's sweet.
telling all his friends and teachers like he's proud of it, which is nice. And he knows now that I'm good and I'm healthy. But our middle child, she didn't realize, which is nice. And of course, she would ask questions too, like "Where's mommy?" if I wasn't there, and we just shared, "She's at the doctor," or "Not feeling well. I'm getting better."
Well, total resilience. I mean, and it speaks to the structure and the containment in the house too, right? Like the level that
Mm,
you supported those kids and, the family that pitched in the village, right? You said like we kept it as normal as possible. On Sundays,
yeah.
my mom would arrive and it was just the norm, which
Yep.
is speaks to the consistency we talk a lot about on this podcast in all different ways, shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
And so at
Yep.
what point during that journey do you get like the all clear of like how
Yeah.
old was your youngest? How long is that process through chemo and radiation?
I Once I got to the biweekly chemo treatments, I had done the first two, and on the second round, it put me in the hospital, and I was really, really sick. I ended up saying to my oncologist, like, please don't make me do more. Like,
Mm,
this was what they call the red devil treatment. And it, like, now I know why. When you hear of chemo and you hear of the red devil, like, that's what did it in for me. And my oncologist is great. He ended up sitting me down and saying, research shows that where you are at your age, at this point of your treatment, that you'll be okay if you don't have the last 2 rounds of this. Being, that it was, my body was not taking it, the way I guess it should have. It was really having a hard time with that treatment. So we ended up stopping it. I didn't have the last 2 rounds. So I got to ring the chemo bell on that was the day after Labor Day, so September 3rd. So I stopped that, and then I had my surgery, my double mastectomy in October of 2024, so just last year. And I actually just had a hysterectomy 4 weeks ago. So I chose to do that
Unbelievable.
because of carrying the BRCA
truly.
gene. And does it ever stop? Like, does it stop there? I like to think, yeah, I'd like to think that the hysterectomy was the last piece to this journey, but I now it's the constant doctor's appointments now. I was just there today. The follow-up, I'm going like every 6 months the first year, then it every year, every
Mhm.
year and a half, every 5, until about like 5 years, and then I'm really tapering down from there, but I'll be followed for a while for my doctors. But I will say October is October was my 1 year cancer-free anniversary. So we'll
Incredible.
go with that.
And when you think about going through that and, now, I mean, we talk about women and postpartum, we talk about hormonal changes, we talk about menopause, we talk about it all. Going through a double mastectomy and then a hysterectomy. And did you notice, like, was it relief for you or was it scary? Was it, what type of like psychological shift took place during that? I
Mhm.
mean, that's can be emotional for a lot of women.
Yeah. I was obviously scared to have the double mastectomy, a really big surgery, hours long. I was under anesthesia for. It's like it's so hard to describe. You never think that this would happen, and you would need that type of surgery, and it's an interesting feeling. I was scared, but like I said, I trusted my doctors. They were
Mhm.
great, and I was obviously thrilled when I heard that the surgery went really well and things were good. And then 5 months after that, I developed an infection um, in one of or around one of the implants, so I had to have one removed just 5 months after that. And I developed this infection, and my doctors are like, "We have no idea where this came from." And I'm like, "Well, great. Like, what do you mean you have no idea where this came from?" And they're like, "Well, usually if an infection were to develop, it would be shortly after your surgery, right after the implants were put in. But yours came 5 months later." I'm like, "Well, that's really, you know,
Reassuring.
nice." Yeah, really
Yeah, we don't
reassuring.
need any more medical anomalies. We're good for
We're
a
good on that.
I
lifetime.
don't,
Yeah.
right. Like, I really don't want to be part of a research
Yeah,
study,
study.
honestly. So, um, anyway, I had to have that removed like right away. Like, it wasn't getting better with antibiotics, and like 3 or 4 days go by, and we're getting up to a week, and my surgeon was like, he called me and he said, "We need to get it removed. How's tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Well, not great, but like, all right, I'll see you there on the operating table, doc." Like, so Marty was away
I mean,
because when it
Marty
rains,
was
it
a
pours. He was gone the whole week for
I do
work.
think I remember this. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
remember this
So
event.
we
Yeah.
called in both Nona and Gigi, and we said, "You have to help us out." Of course, they came. I was in the hospital for a week, a full week, because of the type of procedure that he did. He removed the implant. They hooked me up to what they call a wound vac machine, um,
oh,
this little like
mm,
portable machine. Yep.
yeah.
And I it flushed out the spot continuously for like a week straight. During that week, I had 3 surgeries. I went in to get it removed. I went
Oh my
in to
god.
surgery, yeah, another time to make sure things were getting cleared out. The infection was, gone and things were looking good. They hooked me back up to the wound vac. And then at the end of that week, I got a new implant put in. And then I went home the next day or shortly after. But
I feel vaguely, and I'm not throwing Marty under the bus here, but I'm not sure he described this accurately.
You know what? It would be I'm sure he was super supportive, but I know in that moment you were like, of course you're on a work trip. Hopefully it was a work trip,
right.
not a personal
It
leisure
was.
trip.
No, 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 he would have canceled it. Yeah, it was a work trip. But that's what I mean when the doctors were like, when I say to them, like, "Well, I have no choice. I have to get this surgery." And they're like, "Well, no, you do. You do have a choice." But in that situation, my choice was either tomorrow or maybe the next day.
Right, right. There
So
wasn't a lot
I
of
Well, it's
tried
like,
to
time.
yeah.
like line it up with when he was returning home and who could watch the
Yeah.
kids. Again, it goes back to being a mom. My mind was not about getting this out and taking care of it. It was like, who's going to pick up my kid from school today? Like, I'm going into the hospital about to have surgery, but like, are the kids okay? Like, my mom was like, "You are crazy. They're fine. Focus on your health."
Do you feel like that has had to I mean, it's such a crucial point for moms. And so with everything that you went through, do you feel now that you pay attention to you more to make sure you're filling your cup? Like, what does that look like with a mom, because you were forced to slow down, number one, and you were forced to kind of hand over the reins to other people to help. So what does that look like now? And does it look different than before?
I'm trying. I like to think that I'm trying to do more to fill my cup, but it's hard. It's really difficult to think about myself or put myself first um, before the kids and our family. But yeah, I think I need to be better about it. And everybody says it. Oh, Chimri, go take some time for yourself, or you and Marty, like go to dinner, do this, do that. But both of us were like, yeah, yeah, we'll get to it, we'll do it. But the kids,
Mhm.
because there's always something going on, and we try to keep in our house, we try to keep the kids on their normal schedules and our lives as normal as possible because kids thrive and our kids thrive on schedule and routine. And in a way we
Mm,
do too. If something is different, we're like, oh my God, we can't wait to go back home and like be in our little bubble again. Um, so yeah,
so
I
true.
I have to do more for myself. I will say I have to get better about that.
How did this experience shape I mean, do you have spiritual beliefs? Like, what did you lean on that during this experience? And I also, a follow-up question is also like, how did this change your relationship with your husband?
Mm,
I I'm religious. I'm not super religious in the form of like going to church every Sunday. I pray. I Of course, like you said, Jill, like, why me, God? Why me? Like that's what I was thinking a lot of the time. But I had a lot of people too reaching out to me saying, I prayed for you. And it was just really nice to have the support from other people who believe a little bit more, I guess, I would say, in that sense. But how did it change my relationship with my husband? It didn't. It made it stronger. He he was at every treatment. Um, the cold cap that I did was intense, and honestly, I thank God that he was there because he he made me laugh. He made it not as not as grueling of an experience every week that we were there. I had to also part of the treatment that I was going through would have caused what they call neuropathy. It's like tingling in your fingers and toes. So on top of the ice cold cap, I had to wear frozen mittens and like socks.
oh,
So he would put them on for me because I had got the cap on, I got 1 mitt on, like, he would have to do all of that for me. So I am so thankful for him for being there and doing that, and, like, I cried and cried and cried when I was losing my hair, and he was so supportive.
So you had to do this whole cold cap and then you still lost your hair? Wasn't that the point of it?
Yeah,
That would have been
it's
insult to injury.
Totally.
and and that's not covered under insurance either. So,
Of course it's not.
Add it to the bill. Yeah.
paid a lot
Yeah.
of money for that, couple $1,000 for that, and they say it's supposed to preserve the follicles, so if you do lose your hair, then, there's some parts of, the
Your
follicles that
hair
are
looks
saved.
so
So
thick
I was gonna say
and
your hair
so
looks
it
full.
is
great, like
Yeah.
it's thriving right
thanks.
now,
Yes.
so
It
Yeah.
is, thank you. I had really thick, long hair when I
Yeah.
started and, I lost it and, it came in thick, so I'm thankful for that, but I try not to think that the cold cap did absolutely nothing because that would be such a waste of money and time and pain. That thing was painful. It was so cold. But yeah, I would not have been able to do it without my husband. I'm so thankful because if he wasn't there on a treatment day, I had one of our great friends come with me one day and she did a great job and, putting my cap on and all that, and, but it was, like, seamless for Marty. He, like, knew what to do. He had a great relationship with my nurses. They'd be like, "Marty, we're gonna go do this, let me know when it beeps," or, like, "You got her cap and I got the," like, they were, like, the dynamic duo, Marty and my nurse, every week. Um, so yeah, it made us stronger, I will say.
well, that's beautiful because I don't think every relationship lasts through these illnesses and the stress
Mhm.
of it,
Yeah.
especially when you're raising children and, there's a lot to be said for how much, work you both put in before this happened and then continue to after because it's life-changing, right, for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Um, well, you're definitely our first guest to make Molly cry.
I mean, truly, and I cried like 4
I
times.
was getting choked up too, but
Uh,
Molly's over there.
I feel
I
like too
mean,
because I
it's
witnessed part of it and just seeing you the last time I saw you, you were really still sick, like you were
yeah.
at the end of your treatment, but you had lost most of your hair. You had 3 small kids. I was so underprepared on the road trip. I didn't have wipes for one of the children. I don't even know how many kids I had, maybe just 1, or maybe the baby was with me too, I don't remember,
No,
but
she was. She was with you.
oh, was she? And I just remember you being like, "Here's breakfast, here's wipes, here's coffee," and I'm over here like
Molly's like, yeah, G has her shit together and Molly
I
is
really do
floundering.
remember thinking that and being like, "God, like, this woman through all this." I remember looking over at Sam on our way home from that and just reflecting on the strength. I mean, it's incredible, and so we are honored to be in your presence, honestly, and for our listeners, we usually do a permission slip, and it's basically giving permission to maybe someone who's struggling, a survivor, a mom, whatever you want it to be, but giving permission for something to our listeners. So what would that be for you?
I would say permission to, n- know your body, know yourself, advocate for yourself,
Uh,
and, just, of course, be the best version of yourself that you can be. And if it's not for yourself, it's for your kids or for someone else. Yeah, I would
yeah,
say
be
that.
permission to yeah, be permission to be an advocate for yourself. I mean, it's such a
Yeah.
100%. And so, if people are looking to give back this month for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, if they're looking to give to a family that's struggling, who do you recommend for people to donate to? Where can they get involved? Is there any, charities that you are really passionate about?
Through all this, we were connected with a charity in our own town. They ended up putting on a large fundraiser in honor of a wife that had passed from breast cancer, and our
Oh,
family was picked for this charity. And now we picked another family to give back to this year. They found us through Smilo, and I would say, if there's some sort of cancer clinic around someone's area, to look there if they're looking to give back. And of course, there's always, like, the triple negative breast cancer research, all of that, that you can give back to. I'm not really a part of any one over another, but
okay.
I like to
Great.
look for
So
the ones that are personal to us and have helped us. So there's always probably somebody right next door, unfortunately, that is going through a
right.
tough time and some sort of cancer journey.
Thank you so much. It was incredible to hear your journey, your strength. I know that this is maybe the first podcast you're sharing this on, so we're so
It is.
thrilled to have you. And if people are looking to get in touch with Jean Marie, we will have her details in the notes. You can obviously reach out to us at No Permission Necessary via our website, via Instagram, via email, and we're happy to connect you if you want to learn more about her journey.
And this
Thanks
is
for
your
being here.
reminder to get your annual mammograms, to make sure
Hmm.
you're doing your self breast checks. If you don't know how to do it, you can certainly look online and you'll get more information, but it's really important to make sure you're doing that preventative work.
Yeah,
Until next
absolutely.
time, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Thanks, Jean Marie.
Thanks, guys.